So tonight, our local track right down the road from our house, National Trail Raceway, is having a quarter-mile test and tune. And I've been itching for the opportunity to take that Malibu down there and make a 10-second pass. And Billy needs to test his S10 as well. But before we load up to head to the track, I've got some errands I need to run in town. So me and June Pup hop into Malibu, kick on the air conditioning, and head towards town. Once I had all my errands taken care of, we stopped by Jersey Mike's to pick up some lunch, and then head back towards the shop. Jeremy's going to meet me back there and help me get the S10 backed out of the shop and loaded in the trailer so I can bring the Malibu in to get it ready for test and tune tonight. And I think we're going to be taking Kenny's Camaro as well. So I persuaded Jeremy to hop in the S10 and drive it up in the trailer because it's easier for him to get out of it in there than it is for me. Once we had the truck loaded up and tied down, I brought the Malibu in the shop and Jeremy helped me put it up on the lift so I can make a few shock adjustments to prepare for prep track racing later tonight. So I set the front shocks on full tight on extension, made sure the standalone was full of fuel, and then filled up a couple of nitrous bottles just to make sure we've got plenty for this evening. After that, it was time to reprogram the nitrous controller for what I feel should put a 1090 pass on the board. I managed to clean the car up a little bit before I backed it outside, and then it was time for me and Kenny to head towards trails. I know Kenny's pretty excited to take his car down there because he hasn't had a chance to run that car wide open on a quarter-mile track. And this may be our last chance for the season to make that happen. So once we got everything unloaded at the track, it was time to go over the cars, and Kenny started putting some fuel in his Camaro to get it ready to go up and make his first pass. Now Kenny struggles with this Camaro quite a bit because it's got a lot of electrical problems and just gremlins of all different kinds. But this little small block Chevy is out of the 55, and I know it runs pretty good. When everything's right on this car, it feels like a rocket ship compared to my Malibu. And since tonight is an open test and tune until 9:30, this is the perfect night for everybody to come out and test their cars and get them dialed in for whatever they're into. Whether it's heads up or bracket racing, there's a little bit of everything here tonight. But unfortunately, Kenny had more bad luck. I'm not sure what went wrong with Kenny's car, but it's time for me to go up and make my first pass, and I've got problems of my own. All right guys, so not having the best day here so far. I'm having trouble with my bottle heater. For some reason I couldn't get the bottle pressure up over like 920, and I went up there and I purged it 3 times on the line through the motor, and the bottle pressure dropped to 880 psi, 890, and the car was really lazy leaving the starting line. It puffed a little smoke as it left, and I could hear it spit and sputter a little bit, and it was just lazy all the way down the track. I couldn't even hardly tell if it was on nitrous or not, and it only went like 1120 something. Kenny's car, I don't know what's wrong with it. He was supposed to be at the street race last weekend. He tried to drive it to Columbus. It overheated. I don't know whether the plugs are fouled in it. I don't know whether it's got a head gasket problem. I'm not sure what's going on with Kenny's car, but Kenny's car won't run again. So I'm gonna try and get some heat in this bottle and let the sun go down a little bit. We'll try and make another hit here in a little bit. Since the bottle heater wouldn't work, I had to resort to illegal practices to heat my bottle, and then went back up for another time shot. Alright guys, so my rough day continues. I made the second pass and only went 1122 at 120. I had the bottle up halfway decent that time. It was like 980, 990 when it left, and it ran better. It was clean, but it still left real lazy, and I just couldn't figure out why. It should be really hitting pretty good. And I know I videoed me changing the ramp at the shop before I left today, and evidently it didn't save. That was still on the ramp from street racing the other day in Mexico. So my street race tune-up that I had in the car went 1122 at 120. So I have reset the ramp, and double checked it, and hopefully this time things go well. It should really run pretty decent. I'm a little bit concerned about the front shocks. I've got them set full tight right now. I can't slow the front end down enough. I don't know what it's going to do on this pass. It may unload the tire and do something funny. I don't know. I hope not, because I don't think that the 700 R4 will stand much bouncing and spinning and hooking and spinning and hooking. I hope it doesn't do that, because if it does that, it could possibly break the input shaft in the transmission. They're not real strong. The weight of that car and the amount of power this thing should make when it leaves the starting line on nitrous, it's probably enough to break that input shaft if I'm not careful. So we're gonna try it one more time and see what it does. So I go ahead and reset the nitrous controller to leave on 10% and go to 100% in half a second with no delay. That's the shortest, most aggressive ramp I've ever had in the controller with the biggest nitrous jet I've ever used. So at this point, I'm just praying the car doesn't porpoise and rock back and forth on the suspension and tear something up. Luckily, the old car left pretty decent. Although the front shocks aren't tight enough, it didn't unload the tire and went really quick into 60 foot. All right, so we're getting closer. It went 1109 and 119. The mile an hour is starting to fall off now. I figure that's probably because the bottle's getting low. That was the third pass on that bottle. So I've got Vicky bringing me a fresh bottle up to the staging lanes. I'm gonna heat up one more fresh bottle, and we're gonna try this again with no ramp in it. Now, I gotta admit, I'm a little bit surprised that the car isn't running more mile an hour than 120. It went 121 mile an hour the other night with the car rolling out for 4 seconds on motor. Now, I've got my suspicions as to why this is happening, but we'll get into that later in the video. For right now, I just need to get a full bottle put in the car and get it heated up so that I can make one final pass tonight and one final attempt to break into the 10-second zone in this 3,800-pound Malibu. Now, I'll be honest, I didn't think it was going to be that much of a struggle, but here we are. As I pulled out underneath the tower, I was looking at the most beautiful sunset I'd seen in a long time at National Trail Raceway. Everything just seemed perfect. The air was good, the track temperature was down. Everything is just made to be right now. I think this is it. I think the car is really going to do it this pass. The engine sounded clean and crisp in the burnout, and when I went up to bang it through the motor, everything seemed perfect. So I pulled the shifter back into low, wiggled the old Malibu into the stage beam, and turned it loose on the last yellow. The 60 foot felt really good, but going down track, the car just didn't feel like it was picking up mile an hour like it did the other night down at Edgewater. It went through the traps at 6,500, but I could tell something just wasn't quite right. I was trying to second guess myself in the shutdown, and as I turned off the track, I was trying to think back to how my Nova used to feel going through the finish line at about 120, 123. And for the Malibu to go 1090 anything, that's the mile an hour I needed to see on the time slip. Unfortunately, that's not what I got. 1101 at 120 was all it had. So I was slightly disappointed when I rolled up to the trailer, but not completely, because I definitely had fun, regardless of how much I struggled. So close.
That's what we were just saying.
So close.
Don't forget your GoPro.
1101 at 120.
So close you could taste it.
It went 147 60 foot, which is really good for this car. I don't know, it's running really good. It's just I'm so close to it. I feel like it's running out of gear on the other end. Like it's going through at like 65, 6,600. And that's pretty much max RPM for a hydraulic roller camshaft in this car. So
You want to know what Billy said?
What?
Billy watched the video when I got back here, and he said you would have got your 1099 if you wouldn't have drifted a little to the left in the lane. He said that's what got you. You would have had a 1099.
So even though I didn't quite make my goal for this evening, I still drove out of there with a smile on my face. The old Malibu is still in one piece. It's still got good oil pressure. So me and June Pup drove it straight down the speedway to top off the fuel tank and contemplate my next move. Because I'm not giving up on a 10-second pass, and to be quite honest with you, I'm not even going to give up on 10’s. I want this thing in the 9's before the season's over, or maybe at the beginning of next season. We'll just see how it goes. Thursday morning, the weather was beautiful here in Central Ohio, and Kenny Powers showed up this morning with Harley to get busy on folding merchandise and getting ready for the weekend. We've got a little bit of work to do on the Falcon later today, and Kenny wanted to try and take a look at his Camaro. He found this problem underneath the dash, and as I suspected, the spark plugs are completely fouled. So we'll work on that probably next week. But for right now, I want to take the Malibu into Jegs to swap out this bottle heater that quit working on me last night at Trails. And while the Malibu's out of the shop, I know Billy wants to come out and replace the water pump on the Falcon today. It was only working intermittently last weekend at Cincy Street Nights. So Kenny and I go ahead and put it up on the lift, pull the water pump out, take it apart, and find out that the thing is just about burnt up. Good thing Billy ordered in a brand new Davies Craig pump, because we definitely needed it. So while Kenny and Billy are back in the shop working on the Falcon, I drive the Malibu into Jegs to go see Uncle Terry, because I've got a few little issues I want to sort out on my Nitrous kit and pick up a new bottle heater. And while I was in there, I went ahead and talked to Terry about maybe upgrading some Nitrous parts on the Malibu. I feel like I've got some kind of a situation going on here where the line isn't big enough from the trunk to the front of the car, and I feel like the solenoids are a little on the small side for what I'm trying to accomplish. I'll explain all that in a little bit more detail later tonight in the video. But for right now, we're back at the shop to check in on Billy and try and get some yard work done before we leave for South Carolina this weekend. By Thursday evening, we just about had the Falcon wrapped up, and Billy switched gears and started working on the S10 to get it ready for the weekend. He needed to go through and adjust the valves and replace one of the header gaskets before we leave and load up tomorrow morning. While Billy was out working on the truck, he noticed somebody pulling in the driveway back behind him. Guess who it is? Uncle Terry from Jegs stopped by to check out Billy's Mustang. He's been hearing all about this thing and seeing some posts about it on Facebook. And after hearing about this little Mustang going to the final in the Streetcar Cash Days this last weekend, Uncle Terry had to check this thing out for himself. Because after all, Terry bleeds Ford blue. So even though I know me and Terry are really good friends, he would like nothing more than to see that little Mustang finally outrun that Malibu. Terry was pretty impressed with the car, being a 64,000 original mile Canyon red with factory mint tan interior and having absolutely zero rust. I think Terry wants to see that thing do a little bit better than runner-up in any future Streetcar Cash Days. Anyway, after Terry left, a little while later, Uncle Bucko showed up answering one of my 911 calls for help. The Falcon has a fuel leak at the fuel pump, and my John Deere lawn tractor crapped out on me tonight and I didn't get my grass finished. I need help.
You need a lot. I'm not a therapist.
Therapist?
Yeah.
I don't need a therapist.
Yeah, you need a therapist.
I need somebody to help me mow my yard. I got a problem with my lawn tractor.
Oh, I know what the problem is.
What?
Your maintenance, or lack of, zero, none.
That's not true. I put spark plugs in it today.
The wrong ones.
The wrong ones?
The plugs that I had here.
Race car plugs.
Yeah.
They worked.
NGKs.
Did it?
Yeah.
How well?
It ran fine until something happened with the mower deck. I've been having trouble with this tractor all summer, missing and popping and cracking while I'm trying to mow the yard. And a set of new NGK-8 plugs seemed to have fixed that tonight. However, the mower deck has a major problem. It was shooting sparks out and making a hell of a racket. You broke it!
Where's the rest of it?
You tell me, you just broke it.
It don't look like it's even been hooked up in 10 years.
What?
Look at the center. See all the rust? Does that look like it's been bolted to anything?
You tell me. You're the maintenance guy around here.
No. You want to see what a real mower looks like?
This is a real mower.
No.
This is a John Deere.
This is a cheap imitation of a garden tractor.
It's not. I bought this thing in like 1997. It's been a good tractor. It still has the original battery in it.
What about the original hood?
It's right there. Well, my kids broke that. That's not me. Well, can you fix it or what?
Yeah. Which do you want fixed first?
Between moving and trying to take care of my mom and dad, Jeremy's been run ragged the past few days and he's very grouchy.
Anything else? I had to go play Uber.
Oh, you got to pick up mom?
Yeah.
How's dad doing?
Well, he's not doped out of his head anymore, so.
What do you mean?
We'll just say my father's not used to drugs. Got there this morning and he had an eye going each direction. And then I knew he started feeling better because he started bitching. Try not to anything else up by morning.
So after listening to Jeremy bitch about my dad bitching, I told Jeremy to take his bitching someplace else. And he did just that. Probably bitching all the way home. All right, guys, welcome back. So let's talk a little bit about the fiasco at Trails. Me trying to get that Malibu to go 1090s. If you remember when I was at Edgewater, the car ran 1150 at 121. Now you may be thinking this doesn't make any sense because if you turn the nitrous on right off the hit, it should run even more mile an hour out the back. I agree. But there's something you have to take into consideration. With nitrous, the instant you hit nitrous as you're making your pass, the bottle pressure instantly begins to drop. Okay, and it continues to drop throughout the entire pass. I think I just so happened to hit this thing right on the head where I can get the most mile an hour out of it by hitting the bottle further down track, so the bottle was at a higher pressure at the finish line than if I started applying nitrous on the starting line. So how do you correct that? Well, there's a few different ways you can deal with it, but I feel like the main problem that I have is that the nitrous line from the bottle to the solenoid is a -4, and it's a pretty long line. That's a fairly large car. You know, it's a 79 Malibu. I think the line is 16 feet long, maybe. So when you have a -4 nitrous line, it's about the size of your pinky. When you have a small nitrous line like that, that's that long and it makes all kinds of twists and turns to get from the trunk clear to the front of the car, it's pretty difficult to make an 11-second pass. Like usually if you're on a -4 line, if you've got a really fast car, say that runs 5s or 6 1/8 mile, that's not too bad on a -4 line. But when you're trying to run quarter mile on a slow car like the Malibu that runs 12 O's on motor, you're putting a lot of nitrous through that line for a long amount of time. And what can happen is that the nitrous line itself starts to freeze up on the inside a little bit and it becomes a restriction. The other thing is the nitrous solenoid itself can become a restriction at some point, and that thing has the stock standard mainline solenoids on it. And in the 8th mile, it seems to run pretty good, really. So we went 694 at 97 miles an hour in the 8th. But from the 8th mile to the quarter, it starts to drop off. And I think part of that problem is, like I said, the nitrous line being really small and the solenoids are really small. So I talked to Uncle Terry today, and we're going to do some experimenting, okay? I know it would be easiest just to replace the kit or put a bigger kit on it or put a fogger on it, whatever. But for the sake of trying to teach people and show people, and maybe even learn something myself, I'm going to go ahead and put a -6 nitrous line on that car. I picked it up at Jegs today. I'm going to run -6 line from the bottle all the way to the solenoid. Try it that way, and we'll see how it runs with the same exact jet in it. The only thing I'm going to change is the nitrous line, and we'll see if that does it. If that doesn't do it, I'm going to go ahead and put some new solenoids on it from Nitrous Express, a bottom dump nitrous solenoid that's good for up to 500 horsepower. Now, the nitrous jetting that is currently in that car is 200 horsepower. Okay, 200 horsepower doesn't really mean anything. That's just a number, okay? It just means that it makes more than the jetting that came with the kit that's smaller. That's all it really means. Like, for instance, if you took a double crosshair plate like what Billy's got and you jet it for 150, I guarantee that 150 on that crosshair plate is a hell of a lot more than 150 on a mainline NX plate. You can't just take whatever the power rating is and consider it gospel. It's just not that way. Now, with that being said, the Malibu may end up with 2 kits put on it, and here's why. I like to street race that car. I like to grudge race on the street a little bit, and the smaller nitrous solenoids are much easier to control with a controller and ramp in the nitrous progression. If you've got big trash can solenoids or big bottom dump solenoids, they flow so much nitrous that the instant you open them, they flow so much nitrous, it's hard to control wheel speed and horsepower on the street, especially a bare street. So I have always liked to run a plate with small solenoids on the street to let the car leave on, or the truck, like when Tommy's truck was on nitrous. I always like to run a plate with like 125 or 150 shot in it, and I would use the controller to progress the plate in to get it off the starting line and get it rolling, and then I would turn the big kit on once the truck or the car got rolling. That's just my way of doing it. I'm not saying it's the best way of doing it. I'm not saying it's the only way to do it. I'm not saying you should do it. That's just the way I like to do it. So that's what I'm working towards. I think the Malibu is probably going to end up with 2 bottles in the trunk because I'm not quite satisfied with only just running 10s. I can see where things are going, and there's a lot of people that doubt that little small block Chevy, that it can't do what I want it to do. And maybe it can't. I may blow it up. I hope not. But it's probably going to get more nitrous put to it before the season's over. That's all I'm going to say. So with that said, Vicky's in here. She wants to talk to you guys a little bit about what's going on this weekend. What you doing there, Squirrely? You're looking a little rough.
Last minute packing.
Last night you looked a whole lot better at 50, but today at 50 in one day, you look a little rougher.
Wait, 50 in 2 days. You're losing track of days.
Well, it happens.
I just had one little detail.
All
There's
right.
so many cars in small tire. Right on cue.
She always does that when you're trying to do details. She's over there. Look at her. She knows she's doing it. She does it on purpose. Continue, June. All right, go ahead.
There are so many cars in small tire, over 100. I think I saw 120.
Oh, God.
Yeah, it's a big event, and so they're like, well, we better move up the chip draw. So instead of 3, now it's going to be at 1 o'clock for chip draw.
Oh, boy.
That's really the only change in details.
So tomorrow morning we need to rotate the tires on the Suburban.
Wait, what?
Yeah. Kenny's going to be here. He says he's going to be here 8:45 in the morning. He's coming to rotate the tires because ever since we had that tire repaired, they rotated the tires. Well, that too.
Yeah, when you get about 70,
I
it's
know
like,
all about it. I know all about it.
Is rotating the tires going to fix that?
No, but it will fix the fact that it steers to the right really bad all the time.
Well, what's causing the...
I don't know. I don't know. Tommy's driving that thing, not me, so.
Poor Tommy.
He doesn't seem to mind it.
Well, we need to remember when we're in the luxury of Billy's diesel not to be doing 85 when Tommy can't hardly... He'll be back there at 70 with the thing feeling like it's going to fall apart.
Are you done?
Yeah.
Are you sure you're done?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good night. Explain these clips.
Clothesline clips?
Clothesline clips.
It's an old racer's trick from years ago. If you've had a fuel line, a steel fuel line that gets hot underneath the hood, You can put clothesline clips on it, and those help dissipate the heat out of the fuel line.
No way.
Yeah, that's what that's for.
It looks pretty old school.
It's old